The Core 360 belt is the best aid to train the abdominal wall. The Core 360 is a patent-pending, first-of-its-kind training belt that helps you move, breathe, and perform better. We use the Core 360 belt with almost every patient at Winchester Spine and Sport. The biofeedback is second to none, and it's an amazing way to teach proper respiration and can be even used during higher-level movements in the gym. Teaching proper respiration is about as fun as a rash, but with the Core 360 belt, you take all the headaches away. Visit core360belt.com and use the code GESTALT for 10% off all belts. Ohmtrack sensors not included. Again, visit core360, core360belt.com and use the code GESTALT for 10% off. Enjoy the episode. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Gestalt Education Show. Today we are in Austin, Texas. So Brett and I's first time to Austin. So
yeah, it's been amazing.
What
a city.
Yeah, we went to County Line last night, got
Nice.
some Texas barbecue.
Good.
And then, so Brett's teaching an Exercise 1 course DNS this weekend, and so it's been great. Good group so far. And this is before our last day. So we want to welcome our guest, Steve Capobianco.
Perfect. Well done. Goes by Capo.
Yeah,
Yes.
Capo, Steve, whatever. Asshole, maybe? No,
Yeah,
I'm just joking.
I'll stick with Capo.
So anyway, Steve, I mean, you are the medical director for Rocktape, but also the co-founder of Rocktape.
Mm-hmm.
Man, maybe just start us off with what void were you guys filling when this all kind of started, and you know how much has it evolved in the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah. I had a conversation on a recent podcast just reminding me of how it started. First and foremost, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys
we're
are
honored to have you.
in my town. I've moved here pre-COVID, so I haven't had the luxury of experiencing the city as much as I'd like, but I've had some family in the last couple of days and just roaming around the city. This is an awesome part of the country, so I welcome anyone that's listening to come to Austin. But I was thinking about when I started the company was 2009. I was practicing in NorCal, and I was like the taping guy in the small town. I was using Kinesio tape at the time. I did my original Kinesio tape 1. I can't even recall what the trainings were called. With Kenzo, the actual developer of the brand and actually the category of tape, a chiropractor from Japan. Have you ever heard him speak before?
I haven't. I've heard Tim Brown talk about it.
Oh
though.
my gosh,
Yeah.
His accent is so thick. He's a brilliant individual, but his accent is so thick. And then we're talking. This is almost 20 years ago, probably more. I was even a student. No, I was just out of practice. So in 2003, 2004, and got trained under him. I was the taping guy, and a guy just showed up at my office. Apparently, he said this is the argument, that he had an appointment, but that's probably not true. He showed up with a roll of tape, and he says, I think I made a better widget. I want you to try it. And interesting, at that time, I was having difficulty with the tape sticking on the patients that I was working with, which are primarily endurance athletes. And so I said, sure, I'll try it out. I did. It did exactly what he said it was going to do, which was stick better, and it had a different elasticity, and he had all the descriptions that kind of piqued my interest. And so I applied it. It stuck. I called him back in, and I go, I have this idea of taping that I've been attempting to work with, and I'd be curious if you wanted to partner together. And that's how we started the company.
Wow.
So
That is crazy.
yeah. So I provide all the education. He provided, and I should reference the guy's name because he's the actual founder of the product. His guy named Greg Vandendries, really eccentric individual, friend of mine, but he's a brilliant business mind. He came in, he was going to sell this tape in big boxes, like sell it in Dick's and Target and wherever else he could. And I said, I think there's a market of individuals, chiropractors, PTs, occupational therapists that want to use this to help people move. And so that was the platform that we started. It was a movement company, even though it's called Rocktape.
You have a reputation for being a great clinician. So what was the reasoning for diving into tape? What was tape doing for you with the endurance athletes?
That's a good question. Your hands my hands working on patients seemed to make some significant change. That was what I was trained. I was trained to push on bones, so to speak, and something would happen. And as my education and kind of experience evolved, I started noticing that as I started to push body parts in certain directions, I got specific outcomes in respect to someone's movement. And so then I wanted to think of a way of extending that a little bit longer versus when my hands were on the individual in the clinic. And so I started applying the tape directionally, which is a conversation that I think we should have, because it's somewhat misconstrued that I could just apply a direction universally and I should expect the change. That's what I was taught, but it really wasn't what the case was. But if I tested the individual that was on my table or in my clinic in a specific direction, I saw a good outcome, I would just tape them in that direction. And I got an extension of that for 3 to 5 days when the tape was applied to the body. So I just said, this is just my hands stuck on you for a couple of days. Sounds weird saying it out loud, but that's kind of what I'm saying.
That's creepy.
Yeah, it is a little creepy, but it seemed...
He did do that murder, by the way.
That's right. It seemed to work.
For context, when I was trying to figure out how to pronounce your last name, obviously, so I Google Stephen Capobianco. First thing comes up, news story out of Hawaii. Guy gets sentenced 50 years to murder. I texted Brett and go, "Are we sure we're meeting with this guy? Is this actually going to happen?"
For everyone to know, haven't been in Mexico, or not Mexico, in Hawaii in over 10 years, so I have an alibi.
Yeah,
I'm good to go.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, good. And then, so obviously extending that dose response. How then did it evolve into, now if you go on the Rocktape website, you have everything from cups to, wraps to swag to all these different courses for medical providers, ATCs, even trainers, like all this types of stuff. So how did that evolution, what was the point where you're like, oh, wow, there's something here?
Yeah. I'm going to be partly honest, and then I'm going to be partly clinical. So the honest answer would be that I was representing a company and an individual that was a businessman. He goes, "Well, tape's working and it's influencing the category of people that you want to influence. He's getting the sales that he was looking for." He goes, "What else can we make that help people move?" And so we really kind of at that point, and he was thinking of it as a business opportunity. What else could we make and sell? Yeah. And I was thinking, what else could we make and to influence human movement? So I really took advantage of that opportunity, as he did, and we started to evolve the company from just a taping company, hence the name Rocktape, to what we call a movement company, to help individuals move more effectively using different tools that we have in the clinical environment. So we started making, I think the first thing we started to expand was into instrument-assisted tools. Mm-hmm. We make we attach everything to the moniker Rock, so it was Rock Blades. It was the first term that we had for our instrument-assisted tools. We had our Rock Pods, which are our myofascial cups. Rock Floss, which are compressional floss bands, similar to Voodoo Floss, that same category of compressional therapy. And I'm probably missing a whole bunch. You referenced swag. We're probably known for swag. I'm surprised I'm not wearing anything that says Rocktape on it right now, but that's generally my wardrobe.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've done. We've extended into some manual therapy tools to be able to complement tape.
Yeah.
So you thought you kind of had a branding issue maybe with just Rocktape. That's why you had to kind of change the name or tweak it.
Well, not necessarily change the name. It's just that Greg wanted an expansion of products to be able to offer clinicians. I had ideas on how I wanted to use these products in a different way. Because as a general rule, and let's go back to tape. How I was taught, and this is with complete respect to the founder of other categories or other brands of tape, but I just didn't buy in to the idea that we could tape someone universally, that we tape from origin to insertion or to insertion to origin, and we should expect this universal response. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it, so and I didn't believe it when I was hearing it, and so I recognized that there needed to be a different way of communicating how we put tape on the human body, and something that could be replicated, meaning that I could have a pre-post test. I do something on a patient, I see a good outcome, I'm going to tape them in a specific direction according to what I found. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we teach in our curriculum. And the same thing goes with instrument-assisted products, is that I just didn't believe scraping something until it gets red or bruised actually was appropriate for everyone. So that really was my stance with the company, is that I was presented with an argument: what products do you want to bring to the industry, and what message do you want to attach to that? Like, how do you want to present this? And so it just gave me a platform to be able to share what I believed in. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, I should maybe preface that it's not just what I believe in. I'm in the research probably too much, meaning, I'm secluding myself from my family and my friends, because that's what I like to do, is read research, which feeds what we teach in our curriculum.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about, so before we kind of get to the clinical and the meat and potatoes of this podcast, who are your early pushers? Who are the people that kind of influenced you early on that maybe started to give you some ideas on the next education, or influenced your how we teach tape, how we teach blades, how we teach those types of things?
Well, I'll tell you, the first one that I wanted to emulate was Gray Cook.
Yeah.
And we spoke of him before we even came on live. Is that Gray just has a way of delivering a message that just makes sense, and I believe that there's plenty of science that's feeding that individual, but the way he delivers it is so authentic, and that's what I always wanted to emulate. So he's something that I've always
son of
looked
a
up
preacher.
To. Son of a preacher.
And a simpleton,
makes
really.
Total sense. Yes, I know. I love the way he delivers his message. And we were just talking, Brett and I were just talking about when we last saw each other was right before COVID. And at that conference, Gray was teaching at that conference, and I'd never taught side by side with him in the past, so it was an opportunity that I was really looking forward to. But yeah, he's definitely one of my influencers, and unfortunately, I gave myself a tag for social media. This is not a plug. Fascia doc, which I'm somewhat embarrassed of now, but I mean, I've always been fascinated.
Swerve into it.
I know. I've always been fascinated with fascia. And so I guess the other influencers have been guys like, we talked about Antonio Stecco, or the Stecco community, both Carla and Antonio, Luigi, their father, Robert Schleip, Gil Headley, the fascial, geeks out there that really look at this connective tissue just underneath the skin. So those have been big influences.
Thomas Myers had to have an influence in there at some point.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And Tom was actually really helpful at the beginning of the delivery of the educational platform that I created with tape, because we tape these fascial lines in our course, or at least our advanced taping course. We follow these fascial lines, and the lines that I followed initially were Tom's through his anatomy trains, and I had to reach out to him. I invited him to Palmer West, where I did my chiropractic degree. And we spent a weekend working together where he taught the fascial lines, and I talked about how we could start to integrate tape along with that to be able to influence the strain patterns along those lines. So Tom should be added in there for sure.
Yeah. And then, okay, so enough background crap. Let's get to the real stuff, right? So when we lay a piece of tape on the skin, one, what's the mechanism in your mind right now? And then two, is it still similar to us laying hands on? We kind of talked about that earlier in an extension of hands. Is there still a similar, let's just say, nervous system response to also, let's say, manual therapy or me grabbing your arm here?
Yeah, well, I wish I had a better answer.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is. Yeah. There's some evidence that's starting to come around that's indicating that we can kind of mimic what we do with our hands. But here's the thing: when it comes to an elastic strip of tape, when you put it on the body, and this is something that I have been able to document using ultrasound, and we could talk about that, is that looking at what's happening underneath the skin in real time as you put tape on the body, or any influence to the body. So when you do that with an elastic strip of tape, the tape recoils to the center. And when it does so, it actually creates, I call it a tenting effect. It literally lifts the skin away from the underlying connective tissue. And you can measure that. So when it comes to our hands, we don't generally apply a force that creates a tenting response. But what you can affect is a directional influence. So what I was saying earlier is that if I push the skin, laterally or medially, one way or the other, and I got a good outcome, either with pain or movement or both, I wanted to figure out how I could mimic that, and a strip of elastic tape really was the answer at the time. And again, as a simpleton, I just said, well, if that worked, can I just lock that in that direction? And I've used tape for my whole career, and in chiropractic college, we're taught with traditional, cotton athletic tape. I've forgotten the individual that taught the program. It'll have to come back to me. But it is directional tape with cotton athletic tape can be applied, but it's just not comfortable. So what I chose to use was elastic tape because it lasted longer. It was resilient to movement, water environment, sweating, et cetera, for 3 to 5 days. So if I could lock that in for 3 to 5 days and get the outcome extended, that's what I chose to do. So the point was, on the mechanism, mechanically, we can influence the skin by lifting it, creating space that arguably can actually have an effect on fluid dynamics. We could talk about that. But the directionality of it is actually what I think is more important to discuss, because when you start making this tangential or lateral shear to the skin, you start to stimulate certain mechanoreceptors. And that's where I think we should be discussing tape, is what's happening neurologically. Obviously, there's a mechanical load, but you're stimulating mechanoreceptors that respond to that lateral shear, and that has an effect on the nervous system that gives you the outcomes you're looking for. So I think it's mechanical influence that creates a neurological response. Yeah.
And then we kind of touched on it earlier. Talk about maybe the amount of stretch.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of a hot topic right now. Like, well, if I just stretch the hell out of the tape, I can make a structural change.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's kind of a buzzword. Or it doesn't matter how much stretch, just because Rocktape is a 10% pre-stretch on it, or
it's hard to be able to modify to actually identify, but it's 10 to 15%.
So then, is there already enough stretch on the tape that you just need to, you're creating the ripple effect. You know your direction. Just do that.
Yeah.
Because now, even every other tape company in the world, I think they kind of are bought into, we don't put this origin insertion, if you have a lateral elbow pain, we don't just pick the muscle and put it over that muscle. It matters where you put it and how you put it.
Well, I think if we're being realistic and just being honest, it all depends on the individual that you're working with. So there's a couple of factors. When you're talking about stretch, I don't know how the hell you measure the amount of stretch anyways. So when you say you're doing 50% stretch or 75 or 10, whatever it may be, how do you gauge that? And we've attempted, trust me, I'm telling you right now, we've attempted to be able to figure out ways of identifying the amount of stretch, because people think it matters. And I guess I should say it does matter to the individual or the person that's on your table. So what I'm suggest, and this is what we teach in our curriculum, start with as little as possible and start to build up according to the individual. And the way that we do that is that we do what Kenzo would have said back in the day, is paper off tension. Just take the paper away from the paper backing off the tape, apply it to the body part. And if it's 10% or 12% or 15% in manufacturing, you're going to get that recoil of response. The reason I say that is that first thing that we shouldn't do is hurt the person that we're working with. So I don't want to piss off their skin. So I always tell all of our clinicians that are teaching to our attendees, is like, start with the less is more approach. Apply the tape with as little stretch as possible on the area, and then see if there's an outcome. And that might be enough for that individual. And if it's not, the next time you see them, you start to increase the stretch. And always paying attention to what the skin can tolerate. So start with that. And then when it comes to how much stretch, it's going to be that pre-post testing. And again, this comes back to what Gray taught me, is like, you just need to be able to have something that you can anchor to tell you why you're doing something. So if I stretch the skin with my hands and I identify a specific outcome, I'm going to try to mimic that same amount of stretch to the tissue. Always respecting the skin.
How do you integrate your taping in with your other tools? How does that look like in a treatment session?
Most of the people would typically ask, do I tape before an adjustment, after an adjustment, before whatever treatment? And I guess the best answer, and it's stealing from McGill, is that it depends, right? Unfortunately. So it really does. But I would, if I if I had a choice, I would tape. The last thing I would do is I would tape the individual before they leave the facility. It just allows me to lock in, extend the benefit of my hands, whatever we did that day. So that would be the last thing that I would do. There's something about putting, we have a bunch of different colors, designs, whatever that means to the individual matters to them. But there's something about putting some tape on someone that leaves your office and they feel like I got more than, right? So there's a psychosocial benefit of taping someone. They are now identified as someone that's in rehab, that's recovering. There's a component, and we actually teach about this, is that we can't disregard that part of the mechanism. Like we talk about the mechanical and neurological influence of tape, but what is happening psychosocially to that person when you tape a 13-year-old that tweaked their shoulder in volleyball and now they're in this limbo where they just don't know, am I injured or am I not? Should I be playing or should I be recovering? So you go see a clinician, they quote unquote diagnose you and they put some tape on you. Now they're kind of almost labeled as I'm in recovery, I'm allowed to recover, I'm allowed to step back. And so there's something about that I think is important to communicate.
Right. Absolutely. What are you guys teaching now? I mean, people can go into Dick's, they can go into Walmart, they can get tape. So you have a lot of people who are like self-masters at taping. So, I mean, how do you address that?
I don't address that. It's a tough one, right? You can get tape anywhere. You can purchase our tape on Amazon. You can't get our tape in big boxes. We just made a choice not to go that direction. But you can get tape, kinesiology tape, in a lot of different places. And I just welcome the opportunity to kind of communicate the utility of this to a patient. They come in, our patients are coming in a lot smarter than 20 years ago even, right? Sure. They're coming in saying, I've read this. I know what my diagnosis is. This is my treatment plan. They're set up. Yeah. And then either I have to completely, convince them otherwise, or I just follow that path because that's what they came for. But when it comes to tape, they're saying, I've been told that, like lately, if you've been watching the Olympics, I've been having people coming in saying, "Can you tape my face?" Have you been watching any of the biathletes and the cross-country skiers wearing tape on the face? I don't recall this happening 4 years ago. And
you're like, sure.
And I'm like, okay, well, do you know why they're taping their face? And there's lots of opinion. Some are saying frostbite, some are saying lymphatic flow, some are saying sinuses. Maybe it's all of it. I have no idea because I'm not there with them. But patients are coming in saying, I want you to do this. It gives me the opportunity to start to now at least educate them on what's really happening, how long they should be using it. It's not your lucky pair of underwear. It's meant to be for a short amount of time to condition you to where you want to go. And where I met Brett and followed the DNS community, and I've done DNS exercise training, is that when I took that program, so many years ago, I just started thinking, man, tape fits in perfectly into this idea of influencing someone's movement. So I changed that person's perspective that it's not just pain tape. It's actually tape that's going to influence them, how they're going to move. And they probably need someone to help them to figure out where that is.
Right.
So that's how I use it.
It's always in the eye of the beholder. That's what I tell my patients. It's only as good as the person putting it on.
Sure.
You can get lucky if you can do it, and that's great, especially if it makes you feel better. Heck yeah. But let's actually figure out why we're using it.
And I actually use I said, listen, you came to me. Let's create a therapeutic alliance. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. Let's figure it out together, and that starts to build that relationship between the clinician and the patient or the individual. I kind of get away from using the term patient, just make them feel like they're part of the puzzle, right? And so that's kind of how I'm kind of integrating tape into this whole scenario, is that it's just a tool that we're using. Shantae Cofield is one of our she just recently left our team, but she's been an instructor of ours. She's a PT from Southern California, originally from New York, but she won't want to admit that. She's Southern Cal. And she said something at one of our conferences once. She goes, don't let the tool rule you. You need to rule the tool. And I just like that term. That's that really she had a strip of tape in her hand, and she says, well, I'm just not going to just follow what it says in the instructional, in the box, is that I'm going to figure out what this individual needs, and we'll do this together. And so I just love that
That's
concept.
really good. So what about, we've all seen this social media picture.
Oh boy.
The chick getting ready to do the swim and the triathlon, and then she's got literally 3 boxes of tape on it, which your business side are like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think you better sit this one out, Karen.
I think you better sit this one out, Karen.
Yeah.
So, in the advanced courses and stuff, you basically, if you wanted to, you could tape someone head to toe.
Yeah.
You could tape every single fascial sling in the body if you found that it was dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to tape the whole fascial sling, or can you be more of a sniper and try to find, like, are you personally, if you say, hey, this anterior oblique sling, something is jacked up here, are you just saying, okay, this is perfect, or are you more like, okay, this is the part that I need to work on? Or, where's your philosophy kind of lie right now?
I think one of our newbie attendees taped that Karen at that race. Because here's why I say this, because and this is totally my fault. I'm going to take complete ownership of this. In our advanced course, as I said earlier, we tape these fascial lines. We take Tom Meyer's understanding of different myofascial slings or continuities, sinews, whatever you want to call them, that connect, let's say, the bottom of the foot all the way to your eyebrow. Yeah. And so in our advanced course, we tape, and we tape them from the bottom of your foot to, and if you want to, right over your head if you wanted to. And
do you have clippers for them, or
some actually prefer to just go through the experience, and they do it any way they want. And we just, again, I created the curriculum, and I did so, and let me tell you why I did this. I did it because I want them to experience what these slings feel like and how they distribute the strain from the bottom of your foot to a distant area of the body. So we teach it that way, but it's very clear, and I want to make sure this is clear to whoever's listening, that we tell everyone is like, we're not expecting you to tape everyone like a mummy from head to toe, but this is to give you the experience of what this fascial sling, how it influences movement, how it influences your body. I think people are misunderstanding, and they go out and leave our courses and they start taping people. And actually, most of the images that you'll see in our courses, the advanced courses, you're taping over clothing. So people, especially the haters out there, would say, man, Rocktape has completely lost their mind. They're taping over clothing, and they're taping with 8-foot-long strips. So I love the idea of the sniper. What we teach in that is that first understand these continuities, these chains, and how interacting with someone's foot can actually influence their neck pain or headache or shoulder issue. And then once you know these fascial lines and you've now experienced them with some tape on your body, let's now identify where we need to insert that input. Sure. And so that's how we teach it. So I'll steal the sniper. I'll give you credit 3 times.
Brett made it up.
Okay, so I'll give one of you credit, and then I'll steal it as mine.
That's right.
Yeah, well, let's say the master acupuncturist, in the beginning, you need 30 needles. At the end, you need 1 needle.
See, that's what we did.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because it is our friends group, once a month or something like that, we'll have a text thread of some dumbass that has taped like this. And it is a misunderstanding of not only Rocktape's education, but just tape in general. They're like, they're just trying to sell rolls of tape. Like that's...
Right.
And in the reality, you are, but...
Yes.
Also, if we want to take this to the next level and continue to evolve the effectiveness and the actual understanding of kinesiology taping in general, then we got to be a little bit higher standard, I think, and that's where I can see the education from when I first was exposed to Rocktape to now. I can see an evolution, which is great. It's awesome to see.
It's just a learning process, right? So when we first started teaching this, it was long chains. Let's get you to experience this. We promoted that idea, but just to clarify that that's the educational experience to be able to have you understand what we're trying to accomplish with this fascial approach.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah,
love it.
What's your take on taping for performance? So we don't have anybody who's injured. There's no condition. Yeah. Is there times when there's a benefit for an athlete? Let's just say a throwing athlete, to feel like what the right stretch feels like?
Yeah, and I think that's where the evidence is going, Brett, is that most of the research, if you want to call it research, it was really poorly done for shit. If Kenzo started kinesio tape or this category of tape in the 70s, for 40 plus years, most of the questions were trying to either accept or refute what he was saying. So it was all based around directionality. It's like, okay, we tape from origin to insertion of a muscle. Does that work? No, it doesn't. And then again, no, it doesn't. So we had a lot of evidence for kinesiology tape. I'm going to use that as the category of tape. That it just didn't work. But they were asking the wrong question. So over the last 10 years, they've been asking better questions. These researchers have, and they say, well, let's ask about, can it influence pain? Can it influence acute and or chronic pain? And we're starting to get evidence that yes, it can. And then the next basic questions would be, can it influence human movement? And so the questions that are being asked now and actually starting to get some good evidence is, can we improve human movement by improving their, what some are saying, the somatosensory map, their map of where your body's in space. So basically your awareness. Yeah. If we can improve your awareness with a strip of tape on someone's shoulder that might be smudged, going with that pain science community of chronic pain causing some smudging to your body map, can we influence that through tape? And I start off, we influence it first with our hands or tools or whatever instruments that we can have to start to clarify those maps. And then tape just extends that outside of your clinic. And that's where the evidence is going, is saying a throwing athlete that doesn't know where their hand is in relationship to their head, that could influence their elbow, for example. And I've been doing this, I bring that specific topic up because we've been working with throwing athletes with UCL injuries or Tommy John type of injuries, that they're continually being trained to know where their hand is in respect to their head. But if they don't, because their body map is so smudged, that we can tape them in a way that gives them clarity of where they are at all times. That to me is the extension into performance, knowing where your body is in space.
Multi-sensory integration, right?
Yeah, exactly. The pain science snobs too, they would say something like, well, they would get addicted to the tape. You have to worry about that, which I don't believe that. I just want to hear like how you combat
Or the other one would be, well, their brain will forget about it in 5 minutes.
All that's true. Yeah. Now, I'm totally agreeing, and I've read the same research and I've listened to the same arguments. But we're talking about the adaptability or the accommodation, if you will, of the brain to a stimulus.
Yeah.
When we put our clothing on in a day, it's not a dynamic stimulus. And so I'm arguing, and this is what I still need to prove, right? I need to prove that elastic strip of tape on your skin can continually re-engage that conversation with the brain. So like, I don't believe that there's an adaptability or an accommodation with tape on your body that stretches, because when I move my body, let's say we're talking about that idea of the throwing athlete, when the elbow moves through its range of motion and there's tape on it, it actually re-stimulates those receptors because of the lateral stretch on the skin. So I don't think, and this is an argument that I still need to prove, right? Yeah. That I get what that argument is, that your body will eventually adapt to it, potentially. But if we have a way of re-stimulating that conversation, I think there's something to be said there.
I think the argument that people say, though, is that the athlete is going to, they're going to miss that feeling. So every time they go back out on the field, they're going to think they need to be taped.
Oh, well, this goes back to what we said. It's not your lucky pair of underwear. Like, it's on.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to just, listen, it pisses me off that people are, again, misinterpreting the whole idea is that the tape is a tool, and it's our job as clinicians to guide that individual to where they need to be. If you keep taping them, sure, then you've given them a crutch.
Without managing what their dysfunction is.
Well, this is why I'm not trying to fluff your feathers, but I mean the DNS concept for me is like, I'm going to use my hands, I'm going to use tape to extend that, and then I'm going to use some type of movement repatterning to get them to where they need to be on their own. And we gradually literally peel back the tape so then they can actually start to own the movement.
It's kind of like Shacklock. He says imaging isn't the problem, it's the education off the imaging.
Oh,
no different than anything we do.
Yes.
But you can put that into anything we do. It's like the people that say, well, if you go to your chiropractor, you're going to get addicted to them manipulating your joints. Well, like Brett always says, there's a hell of a lot worse things in the world that they could get addicted to. So, I mean, but yeah.
What do you think about, we're starting to dip our toe a little bit, and some of my buddies at Logan and Diagnostic Ultrasound, it sounds like you guys are using that as like a way to maybe objectify. So could you kind of speak on that?
Yeah.
It sounds like everyone's going to have a unit in their office within the next 5 to 10 years probably.
Listen,
right?
I'm turning 50 this year, which I cannot freaking believe.
That's a big one, babe. You're halfway there.
I can't believe it. And so I was a Star Trek baby, and back in the day, Bones would scan people, and I was like, how freaking cool is that? He would be able to tell what's going on in the body with some crazy scanner. I think we're getting close to that point. Is the MSK Ultrasound, is at least the ones that I've been fortunate enough to work with, is a company called Halcyon. Again, not a plug, but they've been nice enough to be able to share their devices, which are wireless units. There's probably 2 or 3 in the market currently, and theirs is just a handheld MSK unit that you can look at what's happening underneath the skin in real time with multiple different tools to be able to see what's happening objectively underneath. And so I've been using that for I've been using MSK Ultrasound for about 10 years, but the dynamic wireless unit for about 3 now, maybe 4. And we have it in our education where we want to kind of just demonstrate, hey, the question about stretch. If I stretch it at, let's say, arguably 50%, we put it on a skin, what's happening underneath the skin?
Right.
And I learned most of this from the fascial community, the Steco community primarily. They've been researching what's happening underneath the skin for quite some time, and they've been able to kind of provide some objective numbers, like if there's a certain amount of space between the superficial fascia and deep fascia, or the skin and superficial fascia, that might be an indication of trauma, or some densification is the term that they use quite often. But that aside, ultrasound allows us to see all this, at least at this stage. Allows us to at least look at the first multiple layers and tells us what's really happening when we intervene with the body. So I love it. I think it's been a great
What's
tool.
the price point of that unit?
Oh, God, I should know this. So we're talking around
Ballpark.
around $3,000. So $3,000 for a dynamic tool that allows you to see underneath the skin. And here's how I really want to share how I use this. Now, you can be a diagnostician, which I'm not, right? I'm not using this device on someone's shoulder and say, you blew out your supraspinatus, of which you can do. Actually, the evidence on the effectiveness and the the specificity of ultrasound compared to MRI for shoulder injuries is really
crazy.
It's pretty amazing to say that an MSK unit like that can really identify trauma equally as good as an MRI, if not better.
ATFL in the ankle too.
That's right. That's right. And so again, you could use it as a diagnostic tool, but I'm using it as an interventional tool. That's the term I'm using, is saying I'm going to intervene with you, and then we're going to see what happened pre and post. Going back to what we said before. How do you feel? Great, but let's show you what's happened. And then I use it as an educational tool, because if you got that person that says, I don't believe what you're doing actually influences anything.
Yeah.
So let me just show you what's happening. Almost like what we used to do as old school, and maybe if you guys do this, I apologize, but if you're doing pre and post x-ray on a regular basis after an adjustment, which is what used to happen, that was a tool where they use it as an educational tool. At least that's what I was taught, is that it was an educational tool. And so I'm seeing MSK Ultrasound becoming that tool to educate the patient what's happening underneath the skin.
And way more objective too. You gave a plug for your social media, and you have some great videos of the actual imaging as your diagnostic with tape after everything. So you're a great follow on Instagram. So
great,
that's
great,
good.
Thank you.
And then let's talk maybe as we're kind of starting to wind down here. Let's talk about the future. So you brought us a new product that you're kind of testing out, but then what's like even the next 5-10 years of Rocktape?
Yeah.
And not the company line.
Yeah,
like,
come
what's
on,
your
like,
real vision?
what's the actual?
Okay, well, that's good, because I'm my title now. So the company was acquired. So that Greg and I sold the company in 2018 to the parent company now called Implus. They're out of North Carolina. And so I have a new title now. So no longer am I the whatever I was before. Now I'm and excuse me for the length of it, the Senior Director of Education and Innovation. I like that last name.
That is fancy.
Buzzword.
I know, the innovation part. So if you're asking me the question of where I think the brand and this category of products should go, is really is the idea of talking to the brain. So I say this a lot in our education, is that everything that we're doing is having a conversation with the brain. And so the evolution of our products, from tape, having that conversation, to tools, to cups, now where I'm starting to look at some technology where, what I brought you guys, I suck at selling anything, but this is my approach to kind of give the sneak peek to your audience. We haven't even launched these products, but it's just using vibration. And as I started to dive deep into the research around vibration, if you guys haven't done so, it's so fascinating. whole body vibration is where most of it's coming from. Coming from, all the way from Charcot back in the 1800s, where he would actually use vibrating helmets and vibrating platforms to help individuals dealing with Parkinson's. Wow. Because what he found was that the patients that were traveling to see him with rail car or horse-drawn trailers were always improved by the time they got to him. And he was always curious, saying, well, what changed from when you contacted me, mailed a letter at that time, I'm assuming, and then you coming to see me? It was that travel there was a vibratory stimulus. So he said, well, let me see if I could replicate that. Again, going back to what I said, if I stretch your skin in a direction, I'm going to slap some tape on it. Charcot at that time just said, well, if vibration gave you that benefit and now you're improved coming to my office, I'm going to replicate that with a vibrating helmet, because they felt that Parkinson's was coming from the brain at that time, which it is. But I mean, they were vibrating the brain itself with a vibrating helmet. And so the research has obviously evolved from that point to
no more vibrating helmets.
From vibrating helmets to vibrating platforms that they've been using on horses for decades and decades for bone improvements. They've done it with astronauts. And so I was just really fascinated, and now they're talking about focal vibration, which, listen, Hyperice, Therabody, and everyone under the sun has created some type of vibrating. We can talk about percussion versus vibration, but that's been around. And what I think is missing, just like I felt was missing with tape, is that we don't really understand what these different frequencies actually can do. And so that's what I've been diving deep into. And I created a couple of products, the vibrating cups, myofascial cups, and a vibrating, for a lack of a better term, gun that everyone else is using, but a vibrating tool to be able to better manage the different frequencies of vibration. I'm not as concerned about amplitude and depth. I'm actually more interested on how we can stimulate the nervous system, that conversation to the brain, with different frequencies of vibration.
Thomas Schaud, we have spent a bunch of time with him in the last year, and that's literally he read the same research, and so he tore apart this random gun and changed the frequency because he wanted to try it on people with low back pain. So now he has this gun that he made. He actually gave it to us that was the right frequency that has been helping people. So it's funny, we were talking about the same thing. He said
the hypervolt was the wrong frequency, so he made one that was
the right.
And there is evidence. Again, I could tell you that there's frequencies, and so the units that I have, just to kind of feed your followers, is that between 20 hertz and 125 hertz, there's a spectrum there, right? So there's a couple of zones, frequencies that can be found for pain mitigation. One's for muscle or tissue relaxation. I say muscle and tissue because the fascial system can actually tighten and relax with different inputs as well. So again, the frequency range is probably a little bit broader than just one specific one, but if you have the ability, which we do with the tools that I created, that's what I'm so proud of, is that I get to now come in at the innovation stage or the ideation stage and say, I want these specific frequencies. And I want us to know when you hit this button what that frequency is, so then us as clinicians can now start to do some case studies, case series to feed more research moving forward.
What about overall like a vibration plate? Like, are you intrigued by that?
That's the evolution, right? So now, have you guys been following the metaverse idea of this, what's going to happen with the world? At least my 13-year-old's telling me more about what the future is going to look like. And when it comes to this metaverse, and I'm thinking of meta health, and this is the term that I think I'm creating, but probably not. But healthcare is going to change, right? We know that. We've seen this change with COVID, where clinicians are literally treating people via Zoom. So there's an opportunity here to discuss how we can start to interact with our patients globally, but how do we extend the benefit of touch, right? How do we get that touch stimulus to be able to influence someone? That's where I'm thinking of creating devices like this, and currently these are not Wi-Fi, but I'm thinking of creating products that, like a vibrating platform, vibrating cups, maybe sleeves or whatever it may be, that could be gate or controlled with a phone from a distant place, where I would send you the products, and that's your clinical tool. And I'm literally in a control room with levers and knobs and whatever. And it might seem strange now, but there was a vibrating helmet 100 years ago. So come on. So there's an opportunity here that I want to take advantage of, and I think it's not just vibration. There's lots of ways of communicating to the brain. So that's where I'm going to be going with the technology, is how do we refine these tools to be able to better communicate with the nervous system.
Is there any derogatory effects to vibration that you found? Or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when it comes to dosage matters, right? So like how much, obviously frequency matters, but duration matters, depth matters. And when we talk about percussion, when I say percussion is poking tissue versus shaking tissue, completely different responses. So you have to know, are we in that noxious, level, or are we in that curative level? That goes back to that fascial community as well. So that's what I'm excited about, is getting into technology that we can take advantage of to do more work.
We can feel your passion. So then what about, just to finish us, so we try to talk people that are leaders. How do you maintain your message across such a big platform? Mm-hmm. How do you get your passion to those instructors that are teaching?
I don't do this. This is what I don't do. I don't want to be the face. I am terrible. I don't know how I got through this interview, but I just don't feel like I'm the one that should be the face of the message. I like being behind the curtain and developing the concepts, and then I have and we talked about this prior to going online, is that I have 45 to 50 instructors here domestically in the U.S. and Canada that are just like legends, in my opinion, of delivering the message. They can tell the story much better than I can. So those are the ones that deliver the message through our education platform. We call it the FMT, the Functional Movement Training System, where we teach tape, tools, cupping, flossing, movement courses now, of just communicating how we can improve someone's ability to move and feel.
Yeah. How awesome.
That's how I do it.
The evolution has been just so awesome. You guys are doing awesome, and we're so happy for you, number one, and happy to sit down with you. So, so we're number one Fascia Doc on Twitter too. Are you on Twitter or just Instagram?
I don't even want to share my Twitter one because it's the earliest. I really don't know how. I'm not great on social, right? So how do you change your name?
I have no idea. I don't even know that.
So I have an old school. So our very first taping manual that I wrote was called Power Taping. Don't ask me why I called it that, but that's what we called it. So my Twitter handle is Power Taping. I think that's just Power Taping. I'm embarrassed by it because it's just, I don't even know what that means. What does power taping mean? But it was a great marketing tool.
Yeah,
it's like Michael Scott with PowerPoint.
I just don't know what it is. Yeah. So power taping on Twitter. I'll say that with a whisper. Fascia Doc is what I am on Instagram, and then if you could spell my last name, that's how you find me on Facebook.
Beautiful. And then if people want to learn more about Rocktape, purchase Rocktape, where do you go?
Rocktape.com. Pretty simple.
It has all the courses on there, the
everything,
training.
If you want to get product, you want to learn more, that's just the vehicle where you want to go.
It's great.
Is it crazy? I know there's a marathon here in Austin, so if we were to go to that marathon right now, I guarantee you Rocktape is everywhere. That's got to kind of make you have a proud dad moment.
It's pretty cool, unless we start seeing tape on the marathon athlete's face. We start seeing that.
We got to draw the line.
Then I'm going to be like wondering what the hell just happened.
Yeah, right. Back to the drawing board.
Exactly.
Call the marketing team. We got to get this figured out. Yeah. So, well, Steve, great to officially meet you, man. I've been following you for a while.
Great seeing you again, Steve.
Yeah. So, man, I can kind of, I'm already getting the idea of maybe a taping DNS mesh with you two in the future. So,
awesome.
Look forward to that. And follow him on Instagram. He's a good follow. So,
thank you.
All right, guys. Well, keep asking why with your patients. I think that's what I really took out today. And keep innovating, even with your own, like in your own treatment room. I think that's a really healthy thing to keep doing. That's what you're doing. You've done for the last 10, 15 years, and it's gotten you here. And
be curious.
Be curious. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
So, all right, guys. Well, good luck with patients. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Gestalt Education Show. If you liked it, share it, subscribe to it, send it to your friends, send it to someone that needs to hear this message. We really want everyone to be able to tune in and get the best clinical advice that they can, which we're hoping that we're giving to you with these special guests. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, or if you have any suggestions on upcoming conversations, let us know. For a list of our upcoming courses, we're adding them all the dang time. So go to gestaltedu.com, click on courses, and they'll all be right there for you. All right, have a good day.